Okay, so finishing the practice quiz, number 3 in the back side says to add these with a common denominator. Okay, so usually you multiply them all together, but if we see we multiply a squared times b squared, that includes ab. So our common denominator can be a squared b squared. So let's try that, a squared b squared. This one we had to multiply by b squared, so that'd be a 2b squared in the top. This one we had to multiply by AB to get a squared b squared, because it's already an AB, so that'd be 3AB multiplied top by AB. And the last one we had to multiply by a squared to get a squared b squared, since it's only a b squared, so it'd be 4a squared. Now we can combine them all. 2b squared minus 3ab plus 4a squared all over a squared b squared. And you can't really simplify that because this one doesn't have an a to cancel out. This one doesn't have a b to cancel out, so that's as good as it gets. Alright, that's just good practice. Doing common denominators is always good practice, so I threw that in here. Okay, number 4. We want to simplify this horrible looking thing. The cube root of 128 a to the 4th to the 3rd. Okay, so let's see. Remember, this means the 1/3 power. So 128 to the 1/3. What number times itself 3 times equals 128? Did I make that easy? So let's see. 4 times 4 times 4 would not be that. 5 times 5 times 5 would not be that. So I think we're going to have to multiply this out. So I'm going to write it to the 1/3 now. And what's 128 equal to? Let's see, it's 2 times 64. And 64, so I'll just show my work. So 2 times 64 times a to the 4th, but to the 1/3 power. But 64 is 4 times 4, which is 16 times 4. So that is 2 times 4 to the 3rd power times a to the 4th to the 1/3. Okay, 1/3 and 3, you can take a 4 out now, because 1/3 power times 4 to the 3rd is just 4. So we can take a 4 out of the square root, and the 2 is just 2 to the 1/3. So we can say 4 times 2 to the 1/3, and the a to the 4th, remember you always multiply powers. 1/3 times 2 is 2 to the 1/3. 1/3 times 4 is 4, and I don't know why I put the 4 first, I was just excited. 1/3 times 4 is 4/3, so times a to the 4/3. And that's about as simple as you can get. You could write this as a cube root if you want. You could write that as, maybe this is an easy way to write it. Write it as 4a to the 4/3 times, that's a 3, 4/3 times the cube root of 2. Either way works, but that's how you do that. Powers multiply. Power to power, you multiply. Okay, number 5 here. It says write as 3 to a power. So that one's already done. And then we have 27 to the 3rd times 9 to the 4th. Okay, 3's, that one's already good. 27 is 3 to the 3rd. 3 times 3 times 3 to the 3rd. And 9, of course, is 3 squared to the 4th. We multiply powers. So that's 3 to the 8th times 3 is 9. 3 to the 9 times 4 times 2 is 8. 3 to the 8th. And now, if we have the same base, we add powers. How many 3's do we have? 8 and 9 and 8. So see, that's 16 plus 9 is 25. So that's 3 to the 25th. And that would be our answer. You could plug that into a calculator. It's probably going to be a really big number. Or just like I said, leave it as 3 to the power. Okay, last one on this side. I might have enough room. Number 6. Says to simplify x to the -5th times y to the 3rd times z to the 10th to the -3/5 power. And again, all you do here is multiply the power times the power. -3/5 times -5th, the negative goes away. The 5's cancel out, so that's just x to the third. Again, 3/5 times -5, the -5, yep, that's right. Y 3 times -3/5, that's 3 times that, so that's to the -9/5. And then -3/5 times 10, that'd be -30/5, which is -6. So z to the -6. Let me see, I do that right? So 10 divided by 5 is 2 times that, yep, -6, which is a perfectly good way to write it, except normally having negative exponents that's great for doing math, but not very good for understanding what's going on. So let's put all the negative exponents in the bottom. So our final answer would be x to the third divided by y to the 9/5 times z to the 6. That's a better way to write it. Negative exponents are just kind of weird. Putting them where they're supposed to be on the bottom just makes it look like something more manageable. And this definitely looks simpler than our original answer. Okay, now back to the top of the other side. Again, practice doing exponents, which is always a good idea to do. Here we have the fourth root. This is number 7, the fourth root of x to the 9th divided by the square root of x to the -3. Okay, so this just means, again, fourth root means 1/4, so that's x to the 9 to the 1/4. Square root here is 1/2, so that's x to the -3 to the 1/2 power. So first thing you can do is change the roots. 4 means 1/4. Now we just multiply powers. That's x to the 1/4 over 9 is 9/4. 1/2 times -3 is x to the -3/2. And now, when you have the same base, x and an x with a power to a power, all you do is subtract. That's x to the 9/4. This is equal to x to the 9/4 minus, so it's the top minus what's in the bottom, minus -3/2, which minus negative is positive, so that's equal to the x to the 9/4 plus, let's make that a 4th, so multiply bottom by 2, top by 2, plus 6/4, which is x to the 15/4. And we could write that as, what, 3 3/4 or something, but that's totally good enough. And this is a lot simpler looking than what's up here. Okay, so that's number 7. Number 8 now. Same idea. We have some number a to the -2 times the square root of a to the -1 over a to the 3/2, and we want to write that as just a to a power because that's just darn ugly. So we do that. Again, let's get rid of all these things here. Let's just write it all as a to the power. So that's equal to a to the -2 times square root of a is a to the 1/2 to the -1. We multiply. I'll just show my work. So that's a to the 1/2 to the -1 divided by a to the 3/2. Okay, -1 times 1/2 is -1/2. So that's a to the -2 times a to the -1/2 divided by a to the 3/2. Okay, now when you have the same base to the same base, we add the powers. So that's -2 plus -1/2. So that's -2.5, which is -5/2. This is 4/2, 1/2, 5/2. So that's equal to a to the -5/2 divided by a to the 3/2. Now you subtract -5/2 minus 3/2. Oh, that's hard math. -8/2. I think that's right. -5 minus 3 is -8/2. So that's equal to a to the -8/2, which -8/2 is just -4. So that's equal to a to the -4. And again, it's nice to not have negative powers. So that's equal to 1 over a to the 4th. So all that nonsense up here ends up being just over 1 over a to the 4th, which is a much simpler way to write it. And this video is already getting, well, I'm going to be fast here. I try to keep my videos under 15 minutes. Don't know if I'll be able to do that here. Okay, number 9 was simplify without a calculator. This is 81 to the 3/4. So 81 to the 3/4. Okay, so 81, which you should be able to recognize, is 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 to the 3/4. Because 3 times 3 is 9, is 9 times 9 is 81. To the 1/4, so here's what we can do. We write it like this. That's 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 to the 1/4 to the 3rd power. Because 3 times 1/4 is 3/4. Powers to powers multiply, we get the 3/4 back. Well, 1/4, this is the 4th root, that's just 3. So that's just equal to 3 cubed, which is 27. So that's how you do number 9. And I will continue this on a 3rd video with the last ones.